19th meeting, regulatory meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First up, vote minutes, November 21.
We don't have to do that. We can put it on the next agenda.
Okay, so scrap that. All right,
Wait a minute.
we have a little piece of other business we're gonna take care of first, right? No?
Yeah, we can do that at the end, when Courtney gets there too.
Well, I thought you were waiting.
It's okay. But we can.
All right.
So no, we can do the other business. This is something that's not.
Update regulation topics. Number 1, fire pits and sheds in an A zone to resource area.
So we have, if you have a copy of your staff notes, in order to proceed with the agenda item, staff was asked to develop a draft definition for structures. Well, let me go. We did do sheds. So we had proposed the definition of a shed is a structure not to exceed 200 square feet. I know that you put not located in an area of natural vegetation, but that doesn't need to be in the definition. That'll go in the regulation part.
Okay.
So is everybody fine with the definition of shed, just a structure not to exceed 200 square feet? Good? Steve?
Mm-hmm.
Beth? Kevin, you good? Okay, so we'll go with that. And then we will modify, the regulation to add not in a naturally vegetated area. We bounced around, sorry, thank you. We bounced around coming up with a definition for structure. The one in the zoning code is fairly lengthy, but it does not include like hardscape. So I don't know if the board actually wants a formal definition of the word structure. We've basically operated for the last 20 years or so without an actual formal definition for structure, and
No.
we've
There's
never
a lot
been.
of
We're talking about sheds.
No,
Yeah,
I
but
do, sheds we've done.
Structure is in the
Shed.
definition of a shed. So then the question is, does somebody need to look up that definition? Do we need to have that?
Right.
And my concern is if we try to define the word structure, we're not gonna capture absolutely everything that's out there.
So what do you want to call it?
I don't wanna define the word structure.
All right, hold on. If we've been using the word shed,
Correct?
how do we define that? You don't want to use the word structure. If we call it a shed, that's not adequate?
No, I think,
You see what I'm asking though?
Yeah, I just see what you're asking. Why do we have to say a shed is a structure? Well, we know what a shed is. Everybody knows what a shed is.
Well, I was okay with the word structure, but if you don't want to use that word, then we should just keep it simple and call it a shed.
no, I think you're getting confused. There's two definitions that we were asked to look at. The definition of structure and define the word shed.
Well,
Why do we have to define the word shed?
Size.
That's what you're saying.
all we're trying to
Because
do
of
is
size.
define what it is we're going to allow.
Correct,
The whole premise of this was to allow sheds
correct.
to be in an ARB zone.
Why
So we
can't you
could
say
just-
a shed?
Shed not to exceed 200 square feet.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Okay, perfect.
Simpler is better.
Okay.
I mean, if somebody comes in and wants, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that would be a good example.
A 3-story shed?
Yeah. No, I mean, if they wanted a sauna,
Right.
I mean, then they could ask if that's, would fall under the criteria of the shed. And basically, I know we had this friendly argument last time, but if it's 200 square feet or under and it's non-habitable space, that's the way I see it, is fine.
But I think the last time we also had a discussion about how these types of sheds are turning into habitable space. There's a number of them.
But that's not our purview.
No, that's what I'm
That's the
saying.
building department.
So, but you said non-habitable, you wanna put non-habitable in there, and I would recommend
Not doing it.
not doing that.
Yeah. Because that's
We have
not
a
our
lot of
business.
these,
Yeah,
we have a lot of these sheds, trying not to use the word structure, a lot of these sheds that are turning into like,
man cave.
like bonus rooms.
Yeah.
Bonus rooms, they've got TVs in them, they've got couches,
And the
bars.
The point is that's someone else's responsibility. Okay.
We only care about the footprint. So I would just put, as a definition of shed, not to exceed 200 square feet, and leave it at that.
Yep,
Okay.
Because I don't care what they're doing inside of it.
yep.
I mean, do we care?
No, we don't care.
We don't really care. And it's really
Well,
difficult.
I wouldn't say we don't care. Yeah.
It's just a very hard, difficult thing to regulate.
As conservation commissioners.
That's the
Yeah.
Conservation Commission.
Right, right.
Okay.
What's in
Yeah.
our purview?
Okay.
I mean, we have enough to worry about without,
Yeah. And then, again, going back to, we were asked to explore a definition of the word structure.
which you
I-
don't need now.
I don't think,
No,
No.
because I don't think we're gonna be able to capture absolutely everything.
no.
And then something's gonna come up and we would have missed it, so I'd rather just keep it
Yeah, and
open-ended.
it has to do with what's happening on that property and the
Correct.
findings that you make for that.
We went round and round and round with fire pits. We can, and then, you know, the more we internally talked about it, and we could do it differently if you don't want to go this route. I think we just take it up on a case-by-case basis,
Fire pits?
yeah.
I-
Because what's gonna happen is these fire pits are gonna turn into you know, I mean,
Yeah.
they're gonna be really difficult to.
Big structures. They're
Yeah,
gonna be
they're
big
gonna become,
structures.
they're gonna become structures, and
Yes.
You
It
know,
would-
I
it-
just-
it-
if we wanna
If there
do,
is a complaint, then it would come to us and we.
Well-
What?
I think if you wanna give a square footage, like 200 square feet, you can have 200 square feet for your fire pit area, or we just handle it on a case-by-case basis, and we allow fire pits areas to move closer than the present primary structure. That's what we're grappling with.
I think even 200 square feet is more than you should have. 200
Okay.
square feet of,
I did think footage was a good idea, though.
What was that?
I did think the idea of having a delimited, you know.
A limited.
yeah.
And what, I think last time we discussed it, what did I have the last time?
12-foot radius in a circle.
That was like 150 square feet or something like that we discussed.
144, right.
I mean, I don't wanna beat the fire pit thing to death, but we just,
No, but the whole idea was to give us a formalized guideline so
Yeah.
that we're not, it doesn't come across as arbitrary.
correct.
I mean,
We just saw a lot of, the more we talked about it, the more we looked into it, you know. You have, so we have this regulation that you can't move closer to the resource area than the present primary structure. And that includes patios. Okay? What's to say, and we'll give you an example. There's an example of a property, it's on Jenkins Pond. We permitted a shed that was moving closer to the resource than the present primary structure, but we made findings, we permitted it, it was a shed, it was a very skinny, narrow property. The shed was going to be on a gravel base. And because of the narrowness of the property, the board allowed the shed to be placed between the house and the resource area. They finished the pad for the shed, they never put the shed on it. And they're using it as like a little outdoor area.
Yeah.
So that's what we're grappling with. If we formalize a fire pit area, what's not to say that that fire pit area is gonna turn into a patio?
Well, we just created an exception for the sheds. Right? Isn't that what we just did?
You created a definition.
I had
And if
here
there's
a
no other
footnote.
I know. In the A zone, in the resource area.
Yeah, if there's no other place to put a shed on a lot, they're allowed to put it in the A zone. This-
That's what we just
it's under-
agreed to.
That's what we
Yeah.
just did.
So it could be the same thing for a fire pit. And then
Okay.
if they make it more than what it's supposed to be, then it's a violation,
Okay.
right?
And you
Okay.
said 12 feet,
Radius, I was thinking.
12-foot radius.
Right.
That's pretty
Well-
big. 12
No,
foot-
I was thinking fire pits are circular, I'm sorry, you know.
But a 12-foot,
I think what he's saying is 12-foot diameter.
okay,
diameter.
12-foot
No,
diameter
no,
is
no.
108 square feet.
Right.
So 15-foot diameter, only because I did the math on that, is 176 square feet. Because I didn't know which way we were gonna go with it.
Right.
That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
no, that's fine.
The
So
trick
you
is,
want
it just has to be a pervious surface. You
Do you
know,
want to go in between, say
I like 15.
150? 150 square feet?
Oh, it would be 150 square feet.
Yeah, no
or-
more than-
150 square feet's fine with me,
Yeah.
and I don't think that all,
And it has to be a pervious surface.
it has to be a pervious surface. So same thing like a shed, we're saying 200 square feet, but that's it, the whole shed.
Yeah.
There's no patio, there's no,
Ramp.
ramp, whatever.
That's a problem. No ramp for a shed, that's,
well, it has to be
Porch.
included in the 200 square feet.
all right.
And I think that's all we're trying to get across, is
Right.
X square feet is inclusive.
We're cutting 6 inches off of granite blocks, we might as well, you know, be.
This is what happens when you're trying to create a reg.
So how do we enforce this?
So how do we, so for
It's your
fire.
job, you do your job.
If Mike comes in, we say, no, that's too big. Come back again with a smaller fire pit, with the proper,
Or move it out of the A
Surrounding.
zone,
or move it out of the A zone.
or closer to the existing structure.
All right, let me play around with this some more. It just, you know, the more we think about it, and we're not trying to be difficult, but the more we think about it, it's just running. We're out in the field, we see it, we see how these things evolve, what they turn into, so we're just trying to create something that's gonna work, and it's gonna take a while, so.
Well, they always turn into something, I mean, we just had that hearing 2 weeks ago with, they enclosed the space in a V zone, so.
Yeah,
If it turns into a problem for you in the field, come back to us,
yeah,
and
We'll
we'll do
figure it out.
whatever we have to do to make it a little better.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're gonna be able to solve the problem, unless we get a lot of money someplace.
No, I think we're gonna have a lot of V-zone problems,
Yeah.
yeah, well, we're gonna handle V-zone.
because we've been doing exceptions here and there already, and, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, this whole thing started because of like sheds and fire pits are becoming the norm,
Right.
where
Okay.
people want them, need them, and particularly sheds, especially when they have to lift the house, and all that.
Right.
So we've had that discussion, so that's the whole idea of this, is just to create a standard exception?
For what?
A basic exception, I don't know.
Right.
Okay. Let me still play with fire pit, and we'll kick it around some more.
What's the kick around?
Well, you've got 15-foot diameter pervious surface for the purpose of having
150 square feet total. is what it
150
said.
square feet we changed.
150 square feet total. Pervious surface
Right.
for the purpose of having an outdoor campfire, or something like that.
Right.
Something like that.
Well, I think everybody understands the meaning of a fire pit. Somebody's gonna come in and split hairs, I guess, but.
Absolutely, and that's, I think because we're in the trenches, And we're the ones that are seeing the,
But that's why you get the big money.
I know.
What was that fire pit that came before us, was on Jenkins Pond a couple,
Was that on-
probably 2 months ago now? Do you remember how big that was?
It wasn't that big. It was an existing
might
one,
have
was it
been-
not?
Yeah.
Down on Merritt.
I don't think it was particularly large. you
No,
know? And we were just trying to find a way to allow that to stay.
yeah, I mean, again, and I missed the conversation, so I probably shouldn't comment.
You probably
No.
shouldn't.
So if we say 150 square feet, Mike, you come in and you say, my client has this design, blah, 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 and it has to be, 171 square feet, then we decide if
I would just
we can
never,
allow that.
if
The
it
whole
says-
idea, I think, is that it's just an automatic
if it says
baseline.
150, I wouldn't even try to go on 150. I would, whatever the number is.
There's a handful of engineers who will try to build an envelope, stick with the figures. But then there are some who have clients who
There
say,
you
this is
go.
what I want, go in and ask for it.
Right, exactly.
I say no to those clients.
All right,
At this point in my career, I just
Yeah.
say,
so we good on fire pits?
we're good on fire pits. I'll come up, I'll play around with that for a solid definition for you for the next time.
Okay. So
Okay,
fire pits and sheds in an A zone or resource area, we'll cut that covered today.
correct. Mr. Chairman, if we could just, bump over to the staff notes, we have a few agenda items that are closed that we'd like to just clarify with, confirm with the commission that you have no additional thoughts on those matters, and we can close them and start incorporating them.
Say that again? What?
For the staff notes from last time, we sent you the staff notes from last
Yep.
time. There are a number of items that we closed out, and we just want to confirm that the board doesn't have any additional comments on these items before we continue with the agenda items, just to,
Yeah, so we
Just
can
a-
just vote, okay, we've agreed.
okay?
Yeah,
Pervious surfaces that do not support natural vegetation, the B zone to resource area, we close that. You're in favor of, you're in favor of the draft revision that was presented the last meeting, correct?
Mhm.
Perfect. Plant spacing, we closed it this time, we're gonna start incorporating 4-foot plant spacing. Perfect. Which other ones did we close? Is that the only one we closed, Alyssa?
The last two, 8 and 9.
8 and 9, we're going to write in the regulation, a specific no structure zone and limit of work setback of 10 feet. Right now, we have it in the preamble that there shall be a no structure zone. We're going to actually write that 10-foot limit of work spacing from the structure house to the limit of work. Okay, perfect, so we're gonna close that agenda item and add the table of contents, that's close. Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Mr. Boselli,
regarding those matters you just closed out, the one about B zones, impervious surfaces and mitigation required for those, do you have to have public hearings to change that, or is that just?
No, that means that this board has decided that they want to go that route. We're going to be drafting a regulation, we'll be having a public meeting with the regulation like we did before.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're
we're
going
gonna
a
put
certain
it in
direction, but you're
writing.
still gonna have the formal public hearing process?
Yes, absolutely, we're just trying to,
Yeah,
we're going to, we have to draft all the regulations, and then we'll be
Got it.
sending it out to all of the engineers, asking for your comment, then we have to go out to public comment.
thank you.
we're just trying to narrow it down a bit now, so that,
So we're not talking about the same subject week after week after
Like the
week.
4-foot on center, you don't have to have public hearings for it.
No, that's
But
written,
the
so yeah, so we can
impervious-
start,
Impervious one you do.
yes, we did. The 4 feet on center is written into our orders of conditions, so we can change that as we did last night
Yes.
for your client. We're
Yes.
gonna start incorporating that, but the pervious surface in the B zone to mitigate for, we have to write into a formal reg and have
Yeah.
it public hearing.
Got it, thanks.
No problem. Okay.
You good?
Yeah,
All right. V-zone enclosure, square feet or percentage of footprint for new construction.
so this is an update, so you are having Shannon Holtz from the county come to your next meeting along with Gary Street. And we'll be talking about V-zones, enclosed spaces in V-zones, the limit of moderate wave action, and the new regulations surrounding that. So we just want to push that off to the January meeting and kind of dedicate the January meeting to V-zones enclosures, the limit of moderate wave action that will need to start being.
So how does the wave action and the velocity coincide right now? You know what I mean?
Pre-reg.
So the limit of,
Pre-change in the regulation?
the limit of moderate wave action in the V-zone. So the
Well,
limit,
each property's different.
each property is
But it's
different.
the
The
same as the
limit of
V-zone.
moderate wave action is something they're calling the coastal A-zone, and Shannon can give you, more information on that. It's mapped by FEMA, and it is now incorporated into the state building code. So,
The
And
building
I-
code or the regulations?
it's in the state building code, I believe, and Shannon can confirm that all properties in seaward of the limit of moderate wave action, the LOMA, will need to be constructed to V-zone standards in accordance with the state, in accordance with FEMA.
And are we adding footage to that?
Are we adding footage to that as in?
Well, the velocity zone, Falmouth has
Falmouth
25 feet
V-zone.
extra.
That's what.
No, we would not be adding any additional setback to that.
So if a house is being proposed in either the V-zone or the limit of moderate wave action, it's gonna be affected equally?
Correct,
Correct, it has to be.
correct.
All of them are.
So,
The
and
V-zone
it's probably
standard.
gonna be affected by both, either or both, I mean.
Yeah.
Correct.
I mean, this is the argument to have a Falmouth V-zone. If you have a flat piece of property and you have a V-zone, you don't have a Colgate shield that the waves are gonna stop there. They're gonna keep on going,
Yeah.
right? So we have a Falmouth V-zone. So this is just a formalized way of indicating where you expect waves to go past the V-zone now.
All right. Courtney?
I'm quite honestly a little confused as to what the distinction is between velocity and wave action. That's what I'm trying to get my head around.
So
That's what,
the limit of moderate wave action is they're calling it the coastal A zone, and I can,
Or is this replacing the velocity zone definition?
I can see if Shannon will bring a presentation that'll illustrate it for you, and we can set up a presentation that'll illustrate what the limit of moderate wave action is. We just went through a workshop with the Cape Cod agents, and it was really pretty informative. So I'll see if we can't.
So, I mean, because I still in my head, I can't understand the difference between a velocity zone and a wave action.
I
Because
think-
it's both.
The definition of a velocity zone is the zone where you expect 3-foot waves.
3 foot or greater.
Or,
3 foot or
yeah, or
greater.
greater to be breaking.
Okay.
so we're gonna hold
That's
So
the
that.
definition.
what's the
of velocity
moderate wave
zone.
action? What's the
Moderate
difference?
wave action is
I think it's
an
1.5.
additional area further inland from that where you expect to still
1.5.
have wave action. And that's
Why wouldn't that space be simply included in the V zone?
Because they're not changing the V zones right now.
Can I?
It's a
can I
different
add to
process.
that? I have a little bit of a clarification, if you don't mind.
Okay?
And if you Google limit of moderate wave action, I
Yeah.
did that this morning about 5:30 when I wake up wondering about these things.
Couldn't sleep?
So, it's not quite that. Limits of moderate wave action are in our current AE flood zones.
Right.
So you got AE flood zones, which are still water flooding, means no energy, no waves, versus velocity zones, which means flooding with wave energy crashing into buildings. Limits of moderate wave action, what I've seen on the maps, I shared a link with Jen on this, they occur in the A zones, and they're seaward of the velocity zone,
How can they be seaward?
They're not.
because they're not quite as high energy as velocity zones. They're like 1.5 foot wave heights.
How
One
can
and a
it
half
be
to-
seaward?
They're not seaward, Mike, they're landward.
They're
of-
landward
They're
of
landward
velocity
of the
zones.
velocity zone.
Like our V zone. They can't be seaward.
No, what I believe it's saying is you've got still water flooding in an AE zone, but some of those still water flooding areas do have some wave action associated with them. It's not as aggressive in high energy as wave action in a fully exposed velocity zone. So you will have, like, take for instance like Green Pond, the upper reaches of Green Pond. Right at the entrance of Green Pond, there's velocity zones.
Oh, you're saying there are no, yeah, but we're talking about from the sea to the land.
Yeah.
So there are areas that don't have velocity zones now that will be included in this, because they're A zones, they're further up.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. We're
Yeah.
probably saying the same thing a different way.
But also in areas where there's a velocity zone, we have a Falmouth velocity zone of
Yeah.
25 feet.
Yeah.
And you've argued, well, no, you haven't. Other people argued, there's
We
no
don't need the
basis for
25
this,
foot,
et cetera,
yeah.
et cetera. And I always say, waves don't stop at the velocity zone. And if you have a flat piece of property, those
Right.
waves are gonna continue. So those are A zones.
Yeah.
But further up our coastal ponds, you have areas that now don't have a velocity zone. They're A zone, but they're gonna be incorporated in this, what do
Limit
you call it?
of moderate wave
Limit of
action.
moderate wave action. Shannon
Yeah.
Shannon is
Yeah.
very good at explaining these areas, and she'll be at your January meeting.
And the maps are pretty clear.
Yeah, we'll dedicate that January meeting to this, and we'll have, let's see if she can't bring down a presentation.
Yeah,
Mashpee's already doing this.
Yeah.
They're looking at,
Yeah.
they treat limits of moderate wave action like velocity zones.
And I think the new Wetlands Protection Act regulations do the same thing.
Yeah, I've
They're
heard that
going
too.
to treat areas of the seaward of the limit of moderate wave action, or as they're calling it, the coastal A zone, are going to have to be built up to V zone standards. In the new draft regulations of land subject to coastal storm flowage, if and when, or when and if they ever get adopted by the state.
but we're gonna go ahead now and incorporate this.
You can. I'd like you to hear the presentation from Shannon. Okay?
Right, but the enclosed space is gonna be the same no matter what.
Yeah, so we have to, I just figured V zone, if we're talking about V zone, we just should do it all at one meeting. But if you wanna talk about enclosed spaces now, we can. Again, a
It's gonna
square
be more than
footage,
15 minutes.
yeah, square footage versus a percentage.
Municipal, nothing goes fast.
I mean,
Courtney had his hand up again, I believe.
Well, I had it up, but I'll wait for her presentation. I'm still trying to get my head around it. And,
Agreed.
Yeah.
and, I mean, I can think of an example, and that's that, using your example about the pond. So, you have a hurricane, blows in 100-mile-an-hour winds, you've got these huge growlers coming in off the ocean, so there's your big waves. Now, normally further way up, it might be still water flooding, but because of the wind velocity of 89 miles an hour, it's gonna whip up waves in that normal still water area that could be destructive.
That's
Am
the
I
limit
on the
of
right
moderate.
track?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the limit of
you got
moderate
it.
wave.
You got
Thank
it.
you.
And it's on the
Exactly.
map. They studied it and then delineated it.
it's delineated on the map.
Okay,
They're just adding a
no, I understand, but
performance
now I
standard
understand
or
the
a
concept.
regulation to it,
Thank
more
you.
or less. Yeah, I mean, it's always been delineated on the maps, they're just adding again a
I'm just
performance
old,
standard.
that's all.
But if we were able, if we adopt this
We're gonna do it next week,
That's part of
next
our-
month?
Yeah,
as part of our regulations, we can eliminate our
Won't be
Falmouth.
They're gonna do this.
okay,
I was-
moving on, this is January. Update.
on the map. Because
The mapping is better.
stuff doesn't just stop. Yeah, yeah.
Can we move on to number 3, Jane?
So, stay with that just for a second.
Okay.
So, is the enclosed space, are you saying it's gonna be disallowed because it's in that limit of moderate wave action area as opposed to V-zone?
I have looked at the maps. There are areas where there are homes outside velocity zones, outside 25-foot setbacks, but in a limb wall. And if those houses under the building code are gonna be required to go up on pilings, we might need a provision regarding that.
Okay.
So it might just be good to learn about what they're gonna require, so that we can mimic it. So I know right now, there's a bit of a
Yeah, I mean, that
dichotomy
makes
between
sense.
their 200 square feet, our 200 square feet, there are some differences.
Who-
So it'd be
who's
good
the
to know
other
how
big-
it's gonna be impacted, so we can be in the same, alignment.
With, I'm sorry, who are we in alignment with?
Building. The
Building.
building code. So if they're going to require homes in a limb
Okay.
walk, nothing to do with the velocity zone, up on piles,
I see.
we shouldn't contradict that. So by understanding what they're going to be incorporating in the building code and how that relates to the limb walk, and then teach us all about the limb walk would be important. Because we're gonna see those on plans starting
Yep.
soon, so we need to know what it means.
Correct.
Did I clear it up?
Oh, no,
All right, to be continued.
I won't.
Long-term monitoring for restoration projects.
This is something Courtney wanted to bring up. Staff is recommending just using an RDA to file the long-term monitoring. If you want long-term monitoring on a project,
Well, my understanding is that we want longer-term monitoring, not an applicant. So an RDA has nothing to do with it,
it's not really monitoring, it's
or reporting.
it's when they have to go in after the 3 years of the project, so you give a 3-year permit. And they're still battling the invasives a little bit. So when we say monitoring report, we don't just mean giving us a report on the health of the plant. If they need to go in and continue some minor invasive work.
They have to come for an RDA, but
Yeah,
that's normal, we do that now.
I know, but this one wanted it on the agenda.
Well, all right,
Can I speak to this?
yes.
I'm speaking to a fairly unique situation, but I think I can see analogies. I've been involved with a Phragmites control project on Little Sipawissa Marsh. It goes back to 2008. And there was an order of conditions, and that was good for 3 years. And then we subsequently filed an RDA to continue essentially, the person comes back once a year, takes an hour, walks through the marsh, and over 13 acres, and will treat individual stalks of Phragmites that may have come up. Usually by now, it's 2 or 3 stalks. So the issue is in this situation, there are something like 13 landowners, many of whom are absentee. So to the logistics of trying to practically get every 3 years, the 13 or 14 people to sign on to an RDA becomes burdensome, in fact. And so I would like to, I realize that this is a somewhat unique situation. And so what I'm suggesting is if we allow some flexibility on the part of administration and staff, that they can take a project similar to this and consider it on a case-by-case basis for monitoring. That would be, I think, cleaner and serve the purpose.
That's not really monitoring, that's more of
Why couldn't we?
continuing the work.
She has
So-
she has administrative
Then you're up
approval.
against the WPA. You're up against the state reg.
Yeah.
So you're contradicting the state reg.
And you're not allowed to do it you're not allowed to have these for more than 3 years.
Yeah.
So you have a challenge, work with your 13 landowners, and get a piece of paper and get all their signatures and say, every 3 years, I'm gonna turn this in as an RDA.
Yeah,
So I'm going to consider that matter closed,
Well-
and we'll require RDAs, because we've told companies like Wilkinson and Crawford, who have asked to have permits in perpetuity,
Right,
Um,
that,
We had that this
that's
week.
kind of what
yeah.
you're asking for.
We had that this week.
So I
Yeah.
understand that.
no,
So
I'm
they-
not necessarily
Yeah.
asking for,
Yeah.
but something that's a little more informal, that does definitely have a limit on it, would require renewal, but rather than every 3 years, this might be every 10 years
No,
or
but-
something.
But maybe that's
Yeah,
something
that-
where the homeowners need to create an agreement at the outset that they're signing on for the original NOI, and then let's just, for example, say 2 more RDAs for continuing. You know what I mean? So that's more on the burden of the applicant.
It's on the burden, the
Yeah.
What
burden
I
is on
was,
the
what
applicant.
I understood monitoring, or at least what I had asked about was, we have a lot of projects that come before us that, you know, the mitigation from 3 years ago is gone or dead. What I'm asking, and I think I asked you this and you already answered, but what I was thinking for monitoring was, is there a way that they can report, we can, figure of speech, make them report how the survivability of these plants after the permit? And I think you said we can't legally. That's what I was looking for, was some way that the applicant would have to report year 4, 5, 6, whatever, to say it's still there, and it's still, because how many applications come before us where, you know, where you're saying, well, we want them to put the mitigation back in before we allow the new project. So, I guess what I'm asking, is there a mechanism for that? And I don't, other than an enforcement.
Yeah, I don't think there is. We can double check with the other Cape agents, but I don't think there is. I think, you know, it's written into the certificate of compliance that these plantings have to remain. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's a new property owner that buys a property where the former property owner is the one that removed them. We just saw that case on Waterside. So, I mean, the case on Waterside is, kind of shows you the challenge. You know, they had a required buffer back in the early 90s. You know, it was required to remain in its natural state, it was removed. They were issued an enforcement order in the late 90s, early 2000s, they restored the buffer, and then all they did was just remove it again. I mean, it's a challenge, it's a challenge.
So the monitoring's off the table.
No, it has to be done under an RDA.
Okay. Vista pruning,
These are just updates, so, staff finds that the commission was considering an option for the larger Vista corridors if a survey plan accompanied the request, so.
because right now we don't require a survey,
Correct.
certified survey.
Not
for
all the
Vista
time, not all the time, unless it's a very tricky Vista, we do not require surveys for Vista prunes. Now, the board was talking about allowing larger Vista pruning or in relation to the size of the property. If it's in relation to the size of the property, then we're gonna need a survey plan, because it's not,
Because it'll become a percentage, not a.
it becomes a
not
percentage, and how are we, when we go out onto a property, let's say a 5-acre property, how are we eyeballing a
Well, it's not even the
certain
acreage,
percentage?
it's the frontage, right?
Yeah, frontage, I'm sorry, yeah.
So, you know, if somebody has a 100-foot frontage and we allow the 25-foot, that's fair. And arbitrarily, well, it's not arbitrary, that is 25%, but, so if we then said, okay, it could be 25%, so now if they have 200 feet of frontage, they could have a 50-foot vista. That's what I think.
Or 2 25-foot vistas.
Sorry?
I read
Or
I read
25
everything you
foot
sent on vistas, and that's.
Yeah, but a
somebody-
total of X.
If you only have 100 feet, you can have one vista. If you have a larger amount than that, like you say, up to 25%. So if you have 200 feet, you can have 2 vista corridors.
Right, but it would still be a percentage, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, I mean, for
But-
the staff's perspective, let's say they have a 200-foot 200-foot frontage, or, so let's make it 168, you know. We need a 20, and you're allowing a 25% vista. We're gonna need to see that on a plan.
Yeah, or it's gonna have to, I mean,
Yeah,
you can
we're-
have a plan, you can have a plan of record, but it's gonna have to be surveyed into that plan.
Yeah, and so right now, the vistas are done a little informally, you know, because plans are expensive and people don't always want to spend the money if they want a vista. So, we're working with clients, property owners, we kind of eyeball it and measure it out. But if you're gonna go to a percentage, it's not always gonna be clean at 100 linear feet of frontage, so.
But 25 feet wouldn't be clear if it's not surveyed either. I mean, can
Why
you
don't-
guys go and define 25 feet?
So we require meeting out there with the arborist, we have them stake it prior to us getting there, and then if there is a significant amount of, woods or brush or something, we'll actually have them put strings and sort of make a corridor. We're comfortable doing corridors that are straight, and we use photos and major landmarks in the area to identify it, so when we go back, we know exactly where it was, without it being shown on a plan. If anything's at an angle, then we're not comfortable unless it's shown on the plan. Like I said, if it's really significant, we go out there, we talk about every tree, every branch, we'll walk it with them, just so we have a clear understanding. If we start going to a percentage, it's just gonna become a little more confusing on size of everything, where those property lines are. So it just gets, I can use GIS all day long, but we know that that's not correct. So unless a surveyor gives me property lines, gives me a corridor, we don't really know what we're working with.
You could use what 3 words, and you know exactly where you are within 10 square feet, with 100 square feet. You know it?
I'm inclined to, on the face of it, I like the percentage rule. However, given the fact that properties aren't always nice, neat rectangles with 100 feet easily delineated, there's a property 2 houses up from me where the property goes down to a point. And the point is right at the edge of the water. So he therefore, by definition, with a percentage, would get a zero view corridor. So I think you have to have allowance for a minimum of 25 foot.
Can't we say every property can have 1 view corridor? But if you want more than 1 view corridor,
No, you can
have to
say,
show us
you
on
can
the
say
survey.
25 feet or a
Yeah.
percentage.
Did
Yeah.
everyone, I know Betsy said she read the materials that the staff collected on the different vistas regulations on the Cape. Did everybody read? Steve didn't read it? Thanks, Steve.
I read a lot, but I
Yeah,
didn't read
you know what,
that.
Steve, you're honest though, I like it. Courtney, did you read it?
No.
Okay, Courtney's honest too. I'm gonna be honest with you later, Courtney.
do I have to stay for that
Yes.
honesty?
Yes, you did, because I'm gonna make you be honest as well.
I almost told him when he came in.
I mean, I think it's something, it warrants further discussion, but, because
I mean,
we're not gonna settle everything in 1 or 2 nights.
Everybody should, the thing is, we have some people who have small properties,
Yeah,
and we have some people who have more than 10 acres. But everybody should be able to have 1 view corridor
Absolutely.
without putting a lot of extra, the way you just
is
said.
there any percent?
That you-
Well, that's why I was saying
Everybody should have
25
one.
25
If you want
feet
more
or
than one,
percentage.
All right, so why can't it be spelled out
Yeah, I was
that
gonna say,
the 25 is a given, and anything more or multiple would require a survey?
survey, and then we come up with some percentage of the frontage.
We'd still have to, at that point,
That's
come up
what I'm
with
getting
a
at.
percentage or something, so that there's a standard.
That's a tricky one.
Mhm.
That is, so let's, so if I'm hearing you correctly, Mr. Chairman, everyone, can apply for a vista up to 25 feet
Under an RDA, like we always do.
under an RDA without a survey plan. Anything above 25 feet must be accompanied by a plan, with a survey plan, and each property is allowed up to a blank percentage. Is that pretty much capture what you
I
just
mean, I
said?
think that's fair.
Yeah,
Does
Yeah,
that sound,
The first
Yeah,
part though,
and
yeah,
just
cause
to
that takes into
clarify,
account my,
you said-
the straight line, 25 feet. As Courtney said earlier, not all properties square into the water.
Right.
Right.
So if they can't tell where a 25-foot line is, then they have to be able to fall back on something.
If the
Right.
size is more than.
They can look at the site and say, okay, you're gonna have to do a plan. I can't figure it out.
yeah,
Under that definition, are we okay doing that?
you know what, let me play with that definition, now that I know what the board wants to go with, let us play with that, let me play with that type of, performance standard and bring it back to you. Let us play with it.
so I have a question. What you sent us was all these different towns, which I read, but then you sent us something that was a combination of our regulations and what you hand out to people? Was all that in our regulations?
So the regulations 10.8B was on that
Right.
document, in addition to what I inherited here as guidelines, which is the certified arborist meet on site.
Right,
meet
right,
after.
right.
So
'Cause-
perhaps
'cause of-
incorporating those officially would be
Right, a
good.
lot of the other ones did officially incorporate all
Right.
that material.
Yeah,
And I
there
thought
was-
that was a good idea.
I agree, and there are some interesting things, I mean, some towns don't even allow the shrubs to be cut.
Yep.
Some only allow 20% of a tree or limbing during particular times of year. So-
Well, I thought that one was really important.
And I think
You
learning.
don't
about-
allow limbing, well, birds are nesting there.
Yeah, let us play with the vista pruning,
Yeah.
section.
Mhm.
Yeah, let us play
But
with
think
that, and
about-
we can bring
think
it to
about that
you in your February meeting.
I actually have a whole set of notes about, that I took on
Yeah.
this,
Okay.
but
Cause
I
there's only
left
one
them
other
home.
town that I found that also did a percentage, but they didn't do a straight line, they did into like a triangle
Yeah,
shape. I'm not suggesting it, I'm just pointing it out, that it's not unheard of, people do it,
I
for
just,
the percentage.
can I make a comment on, real quick? That is, I think we should require that these corridors be surveyed. I think even something that's straightforward. I think they should be surveyed, just because there's too much doubt.
For a vista front?
I don't have.
Yeah.
she's
I
the
don't
one who
know.
has to do it, she doesn't have any doubt.
What I do, we require a survey.
Yeah, she doesn't have any doubt, and if she does have doubt, she requires a survey.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't
Okay,
think it's
well-
fair for people who have small lots.
Most of them are really, really easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody
If they're-
who lives on the coast
So we're
is
saying we'll leave
really
it to the
lucky, but
discretion
some
of
people are
the
Yeah.
staff,
wealthier than
that's
others.
fair enough.
That's
Right.
fine.
And some properties already have surveys, you just can add on to
Yeah.
them. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes requiring them from scratch is cost prohibitive.
Mhm.
And some people have what looks like a vista prune, but was never permitted.
Correct, exactly.
Oh, you see it,
Does
really?
happen?
So even with the survey, are we gonna allow that under an RDA?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think that's fine, let us play with the vista prunes, we'll bring that to you on February.
But I definitely like the idea of incorporating
We will,
the guidelines.
yep, we'll have it for you for February,
It would make it easier for us too.
correct.
And the survey, at least as far as surveys go, would have to be kind of basic. I mean, it wouldn't have to be the whole property.
Well, we would need to see the
Wow.
property lines
Yeah,
and the
yeah,
percentage,
yeah.
so yeah, it would have to be the whole property.
It wouldn't have to be it wouldn't have to do all the wetland
Yes.
resources.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just the property line.
Yeah,
But we don't allow vistas on wetland resources, so if there's a salt marsh or DVW, we won't allow them to cut in it, so I need to see that.
That made sense to you, Mike?
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's case by case, it's gonna be hard to have a one-size-fits-all rule on that.
it is, it is. And the goal is to make it very, very easy for the property owner to understand the vista pruning regs, and also for the staff to implement them. So,
Thankfully, a lot of these properties have a site plan, because they're a house on the water, and they probably needed to get an order of
Yeah.
conditions, so
Yeah.
they have something to start with, usually.
All right, so that's good for now.
correct,
I mean, we have that pretty close to what we want, I think.
yep.
All right, next up, D-zone, 25-foot setback.
Like you to hear from Shannon on that one, January.
Okay.
How's Betsy feel on that one? I'm not quite clear on how you are on that.
The 25 foot? You are clear. You understood me the first time around.
So the
We've
next,
talked about this
He's
before.
joshing with it.
I don't agree, but.
we just threw these next section of topics out there, just brainstorming with the staff on some of the things that we'd like incorporated into the regs, we'd like the commission's, thoughts on the matter. So,
Can I explain something to Mike?
New mitigation approved under an RDA?
You should be happy that I said,
I'll explain.
if a B zone goes to an X zone, there is no 25-foot B zone. You should be happy about that.
Yeah,
I've been consistent about that the whole time.
yeah, yeah.
But that's not what your regulations currently say.
I know, but you write a finding.
Correct.
Steve,
Mr. Chairman, they're not raising their hand. To be recognized.
you don't recognize me?
Lori asked if you would be using that today. I just didn't think it would be against Steve. I thought it would be this one.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're gonna like me later on, don't worry.
I sit here so you can wrap my knuckles.
I know, that's why I'm sitting right here, and that's why you're always next to me.
I'm supposed to use my elbow.
New mitigation approved under an RDA. So there's a lot of times we have small projects, small additions that require less than 200 square feet of mitigation. The staff has been very comfortable approving those under an RDA. It saves the property owner, if they wanna put a small addition on, the addition's 100 square feet. You know, why make them go through, it needs mitigation, but is it, do we want to require that property owner to go through a full-blown notice of intent? That can be very, very costly. So,
Yeah.
We've been allowing smaller projects under an RDA with mitigation up to 200 square feet. And if it trips that 200 square foot threshold, we require a notice of intent. All we're asking for with this topic is that we formalize that in the regulations. So it's formalized in the regulations. Mike's clear that, and I'm just picking on you, Mike, because you're here. So, you know, Mike's clear that, you know, if he has an addition that's 100 square feet, he can file an RDA. That's all. We just want it in the regulations, and we want to know the board's thoughts on that.
So you're saying that, may I speak? Are you saying the square footage of the addition or the square footage of the mitigation triggers that?
Mitigation triggers it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the square footage of the mitigation triggers it.
You're talking
So-
a pretty small addition.
Yeah, I know.
Say 100 square feet in the B zone would require 200
Square, yes,
feet mitigation.
correct. The mitigation triggers it.
I don't have a problem
We
with
do
that.
this already, it's just.
We do it already, we
written
just
down.
want to formalize it in a,
And you've been, that's generous of you to do that, because you used to never allow any mitigation without an order, because you were saying there was no enforcement that the mitigation would be planted and everything, because once you sign off,
Yeah, careful, Mike. I don't think the board wants to gain a reputation as to being overly generous.
So it is a word that hasn't been used.
So
You
anyway,
ever
we just,
combine with Conservation Commission?
So, just to clarify, there are a number of RDAs that have that fit the description you're talking about. And I was always prone to putting my hand up and saying, you know, is this in a flood zone? And you'd go, yes. And so is that what you're talking about?
no, so flood zones are different, Courtney, because they don't require mitigation. So we don't require mitigation. If it's outside any buffer zone, it's just in a flood zone, and you want to build a house in a flood zone,
Good
That's
luck to
fine.
you and the Red Sox.
yeah, that's fine. I'm only talking about projects within buffer zones that require mitigation. And
Okay,
we're
that's
trying,
different.
yeah, we're trying to just help residents get smaller projects, a deck extension.
a shed,
What?
A shed.
A shed. You know, this would be a shed. Except that if you have a 200 square foot shed, you're gonna have 400 square feet of mitigation, and then you're tripping a notice.
But if it's a 100
Exactly.
square foot shed in the B zone,
Yeah, there
It's
you go, that's an
200, yeah.
RDA,
It's an RDA,
hopefully.
perfect.
so we're just gonna formalize it and put it in the regulations.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
What makes you, Mr. Patton, may I speak?
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
What makes it easy, what makes it easy for you to say 200 square feet of mitigation is, lack of a better word, simple? Why isn't 500 square feet simple if it's in one spot or whatever, you know what I mean? I'm just asking how you guys come up with,
We were just trying to find a way forward,
I'm not against it, that's not what I'm
We
saying.
were just trying to assist residents with much smaller projects, so they don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars.
I get it, but if somebody comes in with a 500 square foot addition, has to put in 1,000 feet of mitigation, and it can all fit right here on this side in an A zone, then that's kind of cut and dry too.
Well, I guess it depends on
It-
whether you think it's gonna stay there, or whether it's
That's
gonna
exactly it,
disappear.
Jamie. It's,
It's small.
it's small enough,
The fall, yeah, okay.
see
Yeah,
where
yeah.
I'm going?
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Okay.
Thanks for letting me speak.
Okay.
But your square footage isn't a defined number. I mean, you said 200 square feet, but if it was 225, you wouldn't have a heart attack. It's a small project. So you
Well,
need the
if we write
What I'm saying is you need the flexibility there.
They have the flexibility with
Okay.
this.
So we'll just write up a reg and see how you guys feel about it.
Okay.
Dismissed.
Okay.
You'd be careful that people like, not me, having to do this, file like numerous RDAs, little bites, little
We
bites,
keep
little
an eye.
bites.
Oh, we keep an eye on that.
It's like piling replacement.
We've
2 every
actually
2 years.
had that, it's not, people have numerous little, automatic building permits to work their way around, to shingle around in a V zone. We've had that.
Yeah.
We know that tactic.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 Of course, you would never do anything like
Not
that.
me.
No,
Well, no, I would never recommend it either.
of course not.
We good on that?
Yep,
Yes, sir.
we'll take a shot at it and bring it back to you in February.
All right. Outdoor kitchens in a V zone.
So,
January discussion. It's a V zone.
no, actually, this doesn't actually need to be a January discussion. It's something we can discuss in January. We wanted to bring it to your attention, have you think about it, see if you want to do something about it. So, what is it, what do we laugh about, Mike? Outdoor kitchens and plunge pools are the new big thing?
Yeah.
New big thing, outdoor kitchens and plunge pools.
Not
the-
fire pits?
These outdoor
Fire pits
kitchens
old.
can be
So
quite
2020.
substantial.
Oh, yes.
I think we all remember a property on Surf Drive where it was in a V zone and it was a masonry, basically a masonry wall kitchen with I think it was a 7-foot
Yep.
tall pizza oven.
You remember that one?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we remember this one.
Yeah.
And we made them dismantle it, so we just wanna let you know that this and plunge pools are the big thing right now that we're seeing on properties. And is this something that the board wants us to look at when we're looking at V-zone properties and we see patios out there? And we do have one that I was a little concerned about when I heard they were putting an outdoor kitchen in the V-zone, and come to find out it was just a grill inset in something.
So
But is
this
this
is-
something the board wants to regulate or not?
This is an existing patio, but now they want to put a 3-dimensional structure
Well,
on
this
it.
is the thing, we permit the patio, and we're seeing the outdoor kitchens after we permit the patio. Because we've permitted the footprint,
Right.
the patio's permitted, and all of a sudden,
It's
a
a
kitchen.
structure.
after we issue the,
Raise your hand.
yes,
Now we're in the structure again.
Exactly, this is why I didn't wanna define a structure, Steve. And now we're seeing, they think that they've got this patio, and now we're seeing these outdoor kitchen, the most egregious one being the one on Surf Drive, which is the best example, because the pizza oven was taller than Steve. You're pretty tall, Steve. So, is it something the board wants us to take a look at? Is it something, I don't know. We're
Can we
bringing
say-
this to your attention.
Instead of structure, can we say, basically, a patio is a two-dimensional
Now they're gonna go in the weeds again.
structure? And two-dimensional structures are allowed, but three-dimensional structures are not. I mean, it's not really,
Well, and
Just
then you get into the
two-dimensional.
problem of,
it is, it's just length versus
do you have
width,
an
there's no height.
apron, if you have an apron or something around patio,
It's the vertical wall in a patio.
it's the vertical wall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you
that's
say
the
you can have
problem.
a two-dimensional patio, but you can't have a three-dimensional structure.
I don't know how you,
Courtney?
So you have a
Enforce it.
patio,
That might
and
be-
somebody puts a pergola on it, freestanding pergola. Is that
That's
That
three-dimensional.
require another permit?
No, it can't be in the V zone.
Well, I mean, that's the point, it's same as our pizza oven.
Yeah,
Same as,
that's
well,
what I say. No.
see, that's where I disagree, because that outdoor kitchen in question was a masonry structure. That's not going anywhere in the wind.
no.
That's
but
what we're trying to
it's
prevent
gonna-
Yeah.
with the velocity zone, is to keep stuff from flying around and hurting
also-
people or other property.
It's also diverting water
Yeah,
to either side.
yeah.
So if you happen to be the house on either side, you're gonna get slammed by more than you would if it were just a two-dimensional structure.
I can give you an example of, when you did this. So, there's a property on Walker Street, towards the end by Surf Drive. The property's up on pilings. There's a boat underneath the property, so I think you might all know the property I'm talking about. When the property first came before you, the applicant wanted I think it was a 3-foot high stone wall around the property, and then they wanted to put a 6-foot high stockade fence on top of that wall. Jamie, you remember it, Jamie, Nightmark, you remember it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we made them remove, the stockade fence, but we also made them remove the 3-foot masonry wall because it was gonna divert floodwaters onto the adjacent properties. So now it's just a flat property
Well,
in the V
and
zone.
it will.
So there's the irony, because what I'm saying is, if it was a masonry structure, it would be solid for the wind, but then it creates the problem for the waves, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
And even
we
if
don't
not
have
that much
to,
comes in, even if only like a 4-foot swell comes in, that could make a big difference if it.
it's something we wanted to bring to the board's attention, have you think about it, and we can further discuss it. We're not gonna come to any conclusions today, but we just want your thoughts on it. We want to let you know that this is, again, this is this and plunge bowls. This is the new thing we're seeing out on these properties, so we want the board to be aware of it and to think about it and give staff some guidance on how you want to address these types of things if they come up.
Courtney?
Yeah, so I think we look at it as a two-step process. And to throw this out, in other words, if somebody wants a patio, and it's a two-dimensional thing, here's the patio laying there. If somebody wants to put a pergola on it, or their pizza oven, that's a secondary permit.
Well,
But a lot
Not
of
a
times,
secondary
Courtney,
permit.
the builders aren't aware, you know, I mean, they think they have their permit, this is the footprint that was permitted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, you still can write that into the order condition.
I think it might be something that we have to just special condition when we see V-zone properties, and we special condition it, but put some thought into it, see if you want us to create a special condition or something like that.
And maybe.
I don't think it needs to be a reg, I think we do, it's gonna be a case-by-case basis, and we'll have to remember to write a special condition on it.
Maybe educate
Yeah,
the,
it'd be a bummer
what are you,
to,
you're an engineer. Educate the engineers.
it'd be a bummer to not be told by your client that they have a plan for an outside kitchen and they just said, we want a patio.
Right,
Or- And then it comes up, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a kitchen? And then they haven't got their compliance yet. And then we go for compliance and we go out there and the patio is, you know, pizza oven, kitchen, coolers, fire pits, everything on that patio. And they say, well, we have the patio approved. Yeah, but you didn't ask for any of this stuff.
Right.
So when these guys come up for compliance, it's
You
gonna
have to
be a
use the
problem.
Better for you
And we
to know
have
ahead
seen
of
one,
time.
we're dealing with one right now where I think it was either, it was a compliance or it was I can't remember. We don't remember, it was permitted, it's patio, and it's in a V zone, and there's a substantial 3-foot high mortared, it's beautiful. And we looked at the poor property owner like, you need to remove this.
Violation.
Yeah, so I think it's something that we need to,
So we're trying to think about what we could consider.
could consider,
Could
or
allow.
at least put in your orders of conditions, so people are aware of it.
Rest of them.
Okay.
I think it's the word permanent or fixed applies to the patio. In other words, if you have a barbecue pit and you wheel it out and cook your
Yeah, you could do
hot
that.
dogs and go in and put it away in the wintertime, that's okay.
Put it away
But if you
in
put your kitchen in there,
in
and
your
it's a
200
masonry
square
structure, that's a different deal.
your
So
200
the-
square foot storage area.
Yeah, right.
underneath.
So you
Anyway.
basically use the qualifying word as permanent or fixed.
I agree entirely with Courtney's comments. That's what I would like to see.
Okay,
If you can roll it away, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, you just put it away and store it.
I think it's just gonna have to be.
Underneath your deck, 17 feet off the ground with 200 feet of storage.
Exactly.
Again, we're just trying to get out ahead of it, because, again,
Yep.
new big thing, outdoor kitchens.
Have we ever had a husband and wife team on the Conservation Commission?
Yes, there has
Good.
been. There has been.
Really?
Yeah. Not in my
How
time, in
long
your
did the
time, I
marriage
think.
last?
I think they're still married.
All right, so we're good with that for now? All right. Landscape retaining walls.
Melissa? You eating your sugar cookie?
No, I didn't know I was talking about.
Oh, well, no.
It's just something we've been seeing in the compliance process. People are adding a lot more decorative retaining walls on their property. Sometimes they're bringing in more fill than they think and they're building it up. Sometimes they're just making a pretty feature around a garden. But we've been seeing them more and more, and on some plans, when you see the, they show us the comparison between proposed and existing, and they shade what's impervious in the A and what's impervious in the B. They're showing up on there. They're not being permanent, they're being used as credit at times. I'm not talking about walls like a seawall or a revetment, but just a retaining feature on property, it is rocks that are solid. We're looking for guidance because we don't really know what to do. They're coming up.
You're
They're
finding them
solid.
during compliance?
Yeah.
So essentially, I'm wondering, do we have them mitigate for them or not? Some engineers offer it, some don't. Something to think about, we're just not really sure how to go about it, because it's different every time.
And it wasn't on the original plan.
Correct.
Again, they're decorative features, they're afterthoughts, they're because they didn't expect so much fill in one area or the other, and they want to retain it more. So it's just been a little confusing to deal with, and not sure if we should require mitigation or not.
Because it's impervious.
In a buffer. Yeah.
I say require mitigation, because we're seeing them on,
And I can give you some examples.
yeah.
Before and afters. Of what we're
But it could be
looking at.
mitigation that's put in through RDA.
We just,
I mean, potentially even, if the order's still valid, maybe during the process of the COC,
Yeah, raise my hand.
or,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we catch it at the COC
Then it's
level,
still valid,
Yeah.
then.
we can just have them mitigate for it at the
Right
COC
away.
level.
Okay.
Yes, we
If
don't
it's less
have, they
than-
don't have
If
to
it's less
file.
than 200 square feet of mitigation, you can do it as an RDA.
But what we're saying, if it's, we're in a COC and that,
If the order's valid.
if the order's valid
yeah.
and
Oh, yeah,
open,
yeah.
we just have them incorporated under that order and not require a separate
I have a
permit.
real life example of that I will not share the address with you today, but there's a project where there's a house under construction, and the original concept was to grade around the side of the house, to make it a walkout at the basement level. And the builder and owner decided that they'd rather not have a walkout in this side of the house. So they built a retaining wall that could have been approved, but it wasn't in the original plan. And it's, retaining like 3.5 feet of like material. And it's a good solution, and it would have been nice if they asked, and we could have got an amendment, but now it's there. And I'll be submitting a plan soon for another amendment, and that's gonna
Come on.
be there in all its glory. So I was gonna propose that they mitigate for
Correct.
the top of the,
Yeah.
if it's 1 foot wide and it's 30 feet long, 30 square feet
Correct.
times 3.
Yeah.
Or 2, depending on which zone it's in.
I mean, I think they should be mitigated for, because let's say, well,
Well, they would have to be if they came in originally.
originally, yes. So I think the guidance is we're gonna mitigate for them, because let's say, and I'll use Mike's real life example, Mike comes in, gets compliance, the wall is there. His client gets relocated to Tokyo. New property owner hates the house, it's horrible, can't stand it. Hires Bunker to come in, take the house down, build a new house, so Tom's going through all this little, impervious surface
Yeah, 1 square foot,
calculations and uses the
flagstones.
wall. Because, they're working for their clients and they're looking for every bit of impervious
Or to
surface
get
on that
credit
site.
for it.
Cause
Yeah.
you get a credit for it. So I think the simplest thing, the cleanest thing, and the easiest thing is just to mitigate for them.
Yep.
Okay?
I was nervous that it wasn't approved, that you might even want it to be removed, but, so I
But
was
it is
wondering-
approvable.
It was approved, yes. I just
Okay.
hate,
Isn't there something in the order of
We got clear
conditions that
guidance
says
on
if there's any change?
no matter how small.
No
it
matter how
yeah.
small?
Well, and they didn't go get permission,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Don't,
They don't read that. They don't read the orders of conditions. The owners don't. It's ridiculous. The builders, you're lucky if the builders read them, even though they sign a document, they're supposed to sign a document that your staff gives to them, saying they read and understood this. That's a big problem.
and they're supposed to have the order of conditions on site, which I know they don't always have on site.
Right.
Well, once they've signed it, though, whether they read it or not, they
Exactly.
can't fall back on ignorance.
Right.
Of course, they do.
Well, of course they will. Why not?
Mr. Chairman, so is our opinion that we think they should mitigate? Okay, I just wanted to see.
Okay, so we'll consider
We
that
concur.
matter
Yeah.
closed.
Okay,
Okay.
Good with that?
I'm,
All right.
I think it's right on. And I can see it happening a lot.
We do see it happening a lot, so that's why we just wanted to bring it to the board's attention.
Those lazy
Yeah, I mean, we're
landscapers.
thinking of topics that we, see in the field.
Yeah.
And we're bringing it to your attention,
Yeah.
because you don't always, and
You
just
see the
wanna get,
permitting, but not the final end.
yeah,
We
and
have
just want,
recently, that was that, Martin Road, I think,
Yeah, I
Same
mean, that
thing.
one was
so,
massive.
pre-existing, non-conforming.
Yeah.
that was massive, and there was no way that wall could come down, because
But
that whole
that's-
property would come down.
But that's what we need to do,
Yeah.
that's what we're doing, is we need to not create more damage by trying
Correct.
to correct something. And then how do we get better resource areas? And that's by, to a degree, allowing things, but getting something for it. And that example we had last night was perfect. It was, whether you agreed with it or not, it's just,
Mhm.
it's, It
Correct.
made more sense to allow it and get the mitigation for it.
Correct.
So now we have better resource area, so that's the way I see it.
You're
Alright.
actually gonna see one that's coming in under an amendment that is one of those. It's, you'll see it, you'll understand what I'm talking about when you see it. And we've come up with what I hope is a fix to it, without really damaging the buffer zone anymore. Yeah, you'll see it.
That's our goal.
Yep.
That's a goal, yep.
All right. Grandfathering a dock.
This is something we're still kicking around, but right now, you grandfather docks that have been in existence and in continuous use since 1978. I believe that 78 date was the adoption of the Falmouth Wetlands bylaw.
Correct.
Okay. 1978 to 2024 is 46, did I do the math right? 46 years. It is really difficult to prove that something's been in existence for 46 years. We're just looking,
I know, looking at me, you wouldn't think I've been here for
I know.
46
Yeah,
years.
I know.
we're just,
I know, I'm
We're-
turning
we're-
47 next week.
yeah, we're seeing a lot of these little docks, a lot of them on Jenkins Pond, and our goal is to just get them permitted. So we're trying to find I guess a less stringent way to permit some of these structures, these docks, just to get them legitimized, you know, so we don't have them out there. I mean, I could go like that on some of the ponds and do a domino effect on, because, you know, it's a case-by-case basis. We get we get a notice, we go out there, an RDA, we go out there, there's a dock, and they point to their neighbor and they go, well, they have one too. I mean, we're just trying to find an easier solution, I guess, to permitting these, and so I'm just throwing that out there.
So
having
it's
to
easier,
think
What's
about
your
it.
change the date?
What's your
We
solution?
don't have one yet, we're just
okay.
thinking about it, I'm just putting that out there for any ideas or thoughts or,
Yeah.
okay? Just a topic that we want some, you know, we just wanna flush out a little bit, I
So
guess.
stop soon. I think we should get President Biden to pardon them all.
So the quality of the
Get on
aerials
that.
from the 70s really doesn't help.
No, I mean, there's some pretty good aerials. Let us, it's something we're thinking about. We just didn't want to come in and say, oh, we're gonna do this. This is what we're thinking about. We haven't really come up with anything yet. We thought we actually had an idea, and then I realized it wasn't gonna work. I needed to talk to Maura about some dates. You know, if the 78 date did come from the adoption of the reg, we can't just randomly pick like, you know, your dock has to have been in existence since 1982. What does that date mean? That's arbitrary and capricious. So it's something we're thinking about. We wanted to let the board know that it's something that we're looking into, considering, and if you have any thoughts, we'd welcome them.
Mike, what's the timeframe on adverse possession, do you know? You know what I mean for property rights?
You mean like grandfathering?
The 7 years,
No,
I thought it was.
so when somebody encroaches on somebody else's,
Oh, yeah.
30 years.
am I asking that
It
right?
was 20 years.
Yeah, you are, and I wouldn't even wanna answer, it's complicated and a lawyer should answer that, but it's like, it generally, if you knowingly encroach on someone's land, they have to know they're being encroached on. And then there has to be like an acknowledgement of that encroachment and allowing it to be there for a period of time. They call it, there's something called prescriptive rights.
Yeah.
It's very legal, and I wouldn't even wanna
No, I
say.
thought there was a fixed time to it though.
I think there's a 20-year period in there, but I don't know how it relates to, I wouldn't wanna be the one to like.
Yeah, no, that's something
advise.
I have to talk to Maura about, and it's something we'll be looking into. We just wanted to let the board know we're kind of considering it. So if the board had any thoughts, or strong opinions either way, to let us know.
So, and I know you said we can't just, it can't be arbitrary.
When did the wetlands bylaw go into effect in Falmouth? Was it 79?
I thought it was 79 also.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure where this 78
I
date.
think I know where it came from.
We have, whatever the date,
It came from when the state coastal wetland regulations were adopted.
I thought that was in the
There,
60s.
there was, the freshwater wetlands came first, and then the coastal were August of 1978.
Okay.
I
I'll
think
look
that's
into
what
that.
it was.
Okay, I'll look into that, just something we're looking into, we just kind of want to make it a little easier for the staff and residents to permit these unpermitted structures. And still keeping with the regs.
if,
But we're just looking at a more practical date, a timeframe.
And
Correct.
looking at the aerials, I mean, at least from the nineties on, there's some good photos, but it's.
I mean, I know you're saying it can't be arbitrary, however, it's going to be. So what, just an example, why couldn't you say if you can prove it's been there for 20 years?
And that's kind of what we're thinking, but I need to talk to Maura. I need to make sure that we root it in a date or something that we're not going to be arbitrary and capricious.
Under zoning, if you build something and it's there for 10 years, it's grandfathered. Under like zoning, like if you build an addition to your house without a building permit, and you never got a building permit, and you stayed under the radar, 10 years go by, you're grandfathered, no one can say anything about it.
It's just something we're thinking about, wanted the board to be aware
10
again,
years
and,
isn't very- That's, I'm not suggesting 10 years, I'm just saying that's.
Yeah.
10
how
years
does this all square with the state regs?
in the state regs, they have certain dock and pier regulations, but they're not very stringent. Your regulations for docks and piers are pretty stringent. So,
But I mean, within our regulations as currently, do we have the ability to say if it's been there for 20 years, you can have it?
they have to prove it's been there since at least 1978 and in continuous use is the way your grandfathering policy currently works.
Okay.
Yeah, our bylaw is 79.
Yeah. So thank you, Mike, I was wondering where that date came
Yep.
from. So that's
Hold on, Steve.
So the goal is to register all the docks, essentially, right? The dock's there, you want it, let's say, admit it's there. And then, I mean, if we could do this in a,
Make it
without
legal.
scaring the hell out of the homeowners, when did your dock go in? Just, you have a dock, right?
Well, it has
Yeah.
to meet current performance standards and all of that, but I mean.
We got the one
we're
on
talking-
Minot Road that goes straight up in the air, and we're continuing, that's in continuing use.
No, that's not in continuous
But
use.
that's, we approved it.
No, you didn't approve that one. You didn't approve that. I know exactly what Bob you're talking about. You didn't approve it.
One on Green Pond.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the one on Green Pond, as you're going over the bridge.
Right, right.
Oh. You're saying it was,
We're allowing them to use that?
I don't think it's the same one then, the one right next to the bridge?
Yeah.
No, actually, we denied that,
Oh.
because it wasn't originally permitted. But you raised a good issue. They can prove that was there for 20 years.
They could.
20's arbitrary, I'm just throwing that
Yeah,
out
I
there.
know. So
So
again. if
that could
comes-
become legal under what we're talking about.
If you adopted that, correct.
Okay.
So, again, it's something we're just
I thought we
looking at.
approved it. Sorry.
I mean, it's worked for the last 20 years, but I mean, when the 98 regulations were written, the date was 78, it was 20 years. Now we're up to 46 years, so it's just something we're thinking about.
Yep. All I was saying by offering the 20 is, and it is arbitrary, but it's a long period of time. So, and it's irrelevant, you're not using a year. So 4 years from now, the 20 years still, it's the same
I
principle.
think it's something I just really need to talk to council about and see. But it's something we're thinking about, it's something we're internally talking about, and we didn't know how the board felt. If you felt strongly one way or the other.
I should know, but it's.
Well, I think we should make them legal because we should make them safe.
Correct.
And then for future work, now they have a basis that we've accepted.
Yep, So let me talk to Maura and
So
I'll
we
get
just
back.
have to figure out what that date is, or that time frame is,
Correct.
and,
And if it's legal.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll explore this and report back in February on that.
all right, Courtney?
So here's a radical outside the box idea. Why not declare a dock amnesty? And, no, seriously, and if it's in existence as of today, and then it's legal as long as it meets current standards, and you have so long to bring it up, and bang, after this, anything going forward needs to be permanent. Clean, simple, done.
What you're raising happened already.
Huh?
That happened already. In the DEP Chapter 91 Division of Wetlands and Waterways had an amnesty period for Chapter 91 licenses, and it was in 1991.
Okay.
And they let people come forward, and they said, if you come forward before some magic day, we'll grant you a license for 99 years. If you don't come forward by this certain date, and then you wanna get a license after that day, you can still get a license, but it's only good for 30 years. So now licenses are only good for 30 years. So there were a lot of docks, undocumented docks at the state level. In 1991, people said, well, I'm not gonna worry about the 99, I'm gonna get a 30-year license. 30 years, that's forever. Guess what?
Yeah.
'They're
30
all coming
years,
up.
those
They're all coming
licenses
up
are all
now.
coming up, they're coming up now, except for now this Governor Healy thing is stretching them out a little bit more.
Yeah.
So it's not, that's not radical, because the state did that
No, I mean, it's,
in the early
there's
90s.
certainly an awful lot of logistics that would have to, if you went ahead and did it.
When they
It
did
requires
it,
a lot of thought.
we still have them, like, you get those interim approvals, like we just did one on Green Pond Road, and the state wanted the conservation commissions to comment on them, because a lot of them are little rinky-dink dilapidated docks, and there's an
Yeah.
opportunity to improve them, like put decking on them, or elevate something, or extend it so you're not walking through a salt marsh to get to it, or something like that. So, it has happened in the past.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, it would have, if we did something like that, it would have to be really thought through. But, you know, it might be a simple way to clean up the mess, and then everything going forward, we've got a handle on.
It's something we can consider. Absolutely, I'm just saying, I'm throwing this out as a topic, we were trying to think of topics,
We don't
so we
need
weren't
nine.
like talking about the same.
We'll revisit it in
We'll
February.
revisit it in February, it's not gonna be, an easy thing to figure out, but it's something I think it's worth looking at right now.
Come up with something.
Yeah.
Can't believe we're talking about February. All right, next up, administrative reviews.
I'm just gonna bring a updated, reg to you, so your administrative review regulations are written into your regulations. They're really not applicable anymore since we changed the buffer zone regulations way back when. So I'm just gonna update those and bring them to you,
Okay.
okay? And that's all we have for you,
16 years ago.
yeah.
Wow.
Really?
We forgot about those when we did that. That's all we have unless the board has topics you wanna put on. So January, I think it's gonna be a nice, robust V-zone meeting with Shannon. I'll
Well,
ask
that'll be
her.
all encompassing, because there's a lot to discuss with that.
Yeah,
And then you said, Gary's gonna participate as well.
yep,
Okay.
yep. You requested Gary, so Gary's willing to come and talk to us and, from a building standpoint. I mean, it's a little convoluted right now because the state building code changed. It's now talking about this limb walk, but the state wetlands regulations hasn't changed yet to encompass it, so.
But we
As
can
soon
still,
as
right? We can,
we
even
could
though
do that,
Even
yes.
though the state doesn't have it, we could do it.
Yes, you can be more strict than the state,
Yeah.
correct.
The state doesn't have any performance standards right now that are official for flood zones.
No. They're out there in
It
draft
says
form.
reserved in the regulation.
They're out there in draft form, but they've been
Yes,
in
for a
draft
long
form
time.
for what, 2 years
A
now?
long time.
Yeah, at least a year and a half they've been in draft form. So, we don't know if they'll ever get, pushed through. So that's all we have.
Do we have a date for the next meeting?
It's the third weekend in January. I mean, the
Third.
third Thursday in
Third
January.
Thursday.
Third Thursday in January. I believe it is the 16th. 16th of January.
Same time?
Same
After a
time,
chock-full
3:30 to 5:30.
3:30.
Hard
Not
stop at
3:45.
5:30. We're hard stopping at 5:05.
January 16th?
Yeah.
Vote on something?
Sorry,
Aren't we gonna vote on something?
Yes,
do you want us to vote on the regular, on the?
yes, so,
Budget?
I have a question, but we
Mike, I
can
wanna
do
tell
it
you
after the
something.
meeting.
okay,
Can
so
you wait
I,
just a minute?
Oh, yeah.
so this is under not reasonably anticipated by the chair. Our land manager is doing a tremendous job, but is working quite a few hours. It's at the mercy of the DPW. Poor Mark will get called at 6 o'clock in the morning from the DPW, like, we have a crew available for you today. Unfortunately, we have a very limited overtime budget, and we have exceeded that. I am asking the board to authorize spending out of that conservation trust fund that you have. It currently has, I believe, about $273,000 in it to fund overtime for the remainder of the fiscal year,
Which goes until,
July 1.
and your guess is approximately how much money would it represent?
I couldn't tell, it would be probably around maybe at the most, and I don't quote me.
No, but I'm just trying to get an.
Roughly 10,000 maybe,
10,000?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you guys how much stuff Mark does, because at 6:30 in the morning,
Well, it's not just Mark we're talking about, all of our staff works
well,
hard,
they do work hard,
whenever we ask them
but
to.
we're talking about overtime for Mark.
With a straight face.
I did.
And when he gets called at 6, he texts to me at 6:30 saying, I'm gonna do such and such a land management job. So DPW has
From
been
his
wonderful
kitchen.
working with him, but it's kind of when they're free.
Yeah, it's
When
when
they
they're
have
free.
when
And
it's free.
unfortunately, you know, we've just been really busy and we blasted through it, so. So, anyway, I would just like.
motion or
Yeah, I need a motion and a second and a vote, please.
move, whatever the heck you wanted?
To spend the Conservation Trust Fund to cover overtime for conservation staff.
So moved.
Second.
All right, Courtney? Yay.
Bird eye. Is that, what do you want?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gladfelter,
Just-
aye.
O'Brien, aye.
Matthews, aye.
Pat and I.
Thank you.
It's unanimous. Thank you. That's it, I think.
He left
If you
here at
think of something
4:45.
else, keep quiet.
You could,
Okay.
I couldn't
We
pass
can-
it up.
you
We
could
can
say, you
adjourn now.
could make a motion to
I
adjourn.
have a follow-up.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
There you go.
Gladfelter, aye.
Bird eye.
O'Brien, aye.
Matthews, aye.
And Pat and I.
We're
We're
adjourned.
adjourned.
Thank you.
We're adjourned.